Hi, and welcome to this video on the history of England from King Arthur to Henry VIII. England has a long and fascinating history that stretches back thousands of years. In this video, we will explore the major events and figures of England from the legendary King Arthur in the 5th century to the reign of Henry VIII in the 16th century. King Arthur is a legendary figure who is said to have ruled over England in the 5th and 6th centuries. While the historical existence of King Arthur is disputed, he has become an important figure in English folklore and literature. However, it was not until the Tudor dynasty in the 15th and 16th centuries that the name of the legendary King Arthur was given in royal houses. Why is that?
If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe.
Subscribe now!
In England there were in the early Middle Ages, according to official history, 7 petty kingdoms which emerged in the 5th and 6th century, after the Romans had left and the Angles and Saxons moved in. In the 9th century, the Kingdom of Wessex, under the rule of Alfred the Great, united much of England under one ruler. Interestingly, the names of the kings of Wessex, Kent and Essex each have typical initial letters. The typical first letters of the names of the kings of Wessex from 802 onwards are A and E. But from 519 to 645 the kings of Wessex all have the initial letter C: Cerdic, Cynric, Ceorlin, Chill, Ceolwulf, Cinegils, Cuchelm, Cinval. In the period 645 to 802, the kings' names begin alternately with C or S and A, with few exceptions with other initial letters, a transitional phase, so to speak. In the Kingdom of Kent, the initials A, E and A are also dominant, but not as exclusively as in Wessex. From 540 to 673 all kings' names begin with an A or an E: Eormenric, Ethelbert, Eadbald, Athelwold, Eorsenbert, Ermend, Egbert. In the history of Essex, all the kings' names begin with an S, except 2 kings, the first named Esquine, 527 to 587, and Offa, 709. The other kings of Essex from 587 to 825 were called Sledder, Esaubert, Sext, Saywood, Sigebert the Little, Sigebert the Good, Swithelm, Sire, Sebi, Sigeherd, Swaffrid, Sailed, Swoifbert, Swith, Sigaric, and Sigurd. Unfortunately, I'm sure I mispronounced some of the Old English names. But fortunately these kings can't complain because they never existed.
It would be absurd to explain this by coincidence. There is also no source that shows that the successors on the royal throne were named after the first letters of their name. This is not known from any other country either. The only possible explanation is that history was made up and constructed.
The analysis of the kings' names brings fascinating insights into the construction of official history in England. From King Edward the Elder, 899 to 924, onwards, every 7th king has the name Edward, until Edward IV, 1461 to 1483, if we cross out the period of the Norman dynasty from 1066 to 1154. 2 of the first 2 kings named Edward, Edward the Martyr and Edward the Confessor, were very religious rulers and are venerated as saints. For this reason, the dominance of this name is not surprising, as can also be seen in the lists of rulers of Northern and Eastern Europe. Until 1399, blocks of 8 and 4 can be seen in the number of kings of the respective dynasties, for example 4 Danish kings and 4 Anglo-Saxon kings in the period after the first Danish king until the Norman conquest in 1066, i.e. a total of 8. This is followed again by 4 kings until 1154 from the Norman dynasty. Further analysis of the kings' names, the reigns and the dynasties reveals another system. Thus, the first 2 kings named Henry each have an identical reign of 35 years. Three of the four dynasties after 1154, after the Norman period, each begin with a King Henry. We can observe the same phenomenon in Germany. The three great dynasties of the Middle Ages, the Ottonians, the Salians and the Hohenstaufen, also each begin their reigns with a king named Henry. The successive kings named Henry from the House of Lancaster and from the House of Tudor also have an identical reign of 62 years. They are each followed by kings named Edward. The sequence of kings Henry, Edward, Richard from the houses of Anjou, Plantagenet and Lancaster York is also striking. Thus, here too, there are regularities and patterns that should not exist in a normal course of history, such as in modern times. It was also not until the Tudor period that the name of the legendary King Arthur, also called Artus, was given in royal houses. This is very similar to the long absence of the name Charles after Charlemagne and the Carolingians in France and Germany, and the late reappearance in the 13th century in France and in the 14th century in Germany. In 1486, Arthur Tudor was born as the son of the first Tudor King Henry VII, and it was intended that he would ascend the English throne as Arthur II. He would have been the second Arthur after the legendary king who is said to have lived at the end of Roman times and at the beginning of Anglo-Saxon immigration, i.e. in the 5th century. The city of Winchester was even chosen for Arthur's birth, which was identified as Camelot, the seat of the mythical king. However, Arthur died suddenly at the age of 15, so that his younger brother Henry later became king as Henry VIII. Henry VIII, who ruled from 1509 to 1547, is perhaps the most well-known Tudor king. He is famous for his 6 marriages, his break with the Catholic Church, and the establishment of the Church of England. Thank you for watching this video on England from King Arthur to Henry VIII. I'm sure you learned something new about the history of England and the made-up kings of the Middle Ages.
If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe.
Subscribe now.